Down the hall from the retail space is the 16 by 28-foot display layout.
Well, the layout actually was a thought to try to get people to walk around and see a layout that they can do themselves. I'm not a fancy kit basher. I can't do fancy layout, scenery and so forth. So basically I used accessories, plastic fill, things that anyone can get. And I did all circular tracks. There's not one operating switch track on this layout.
The trains are powered by 4 ZWs. 2,400 lights, mostly 12 or 14 volt bulbs, are powered by 2 commercial transformers with the equivalent voltage of 8 ZWs. 4 Depotronic systems are used. Electronic engineer stops and starts the commuter trains on the elevated level. Electroflash operates the trackside accessories. Watchman 3 stops and starts the trains at the suburban station. Watchman 2 operates 2 trains on 1 track. Oops, it must have been turned off.
The Depotronics, basically what I use it for is every train stops 1 time at the station. That gives you a non-continuous running and creates a little less boring of a layout. But the most important thing is that it cools the transformers. By having each train stop at least once on its circle, it makes the transformers function 8, 10, 12 hours a day, because that one stop every time around keeps it cool. I've learned to run layouts like this. You have to run light trains, light cars, and engines that are durable. The 2-engine cheaper, the 2-motor cheaper engines seem to run better than the more expensive trains, basically on a long period duration. During the holiday periods, we get close to 10,000 people through this layout in a 2-month period, which we run steadily from November, December, and January, 7 days a week.
Lou changes the layout every year and is always on the lookout for interesting things to add.
You don't know what you're going to find at York. Guy said, come out to my truck. I'd like to show you, see if you'd like to have some of the layout. And here, all these buildings are in this old, dirty bags. And I looked at them, and they're real fragile. I said, how much you want for them? He says, how about giving me a couple of those steam engines you have on the table? I said, well, maybe I'll give you one of them. And the fact is, we dealt. I couldn't believe how nice they looked, and I really got a find there. Now, people are going to say, where did you get that? Of course, I'll say, I made it. Right?
Lou became infatuated with trains at an early age.
My father, Frank, was a train man for 47 years in the Pennsylvania Railroad, and I loved trains from when I was old enough to think. Yeah, I had a few trains. We couldn't afford much, but he would take me on Saturday down to the yard and ride me around the yard on switchers. And I knew dope boxes, and we supplied cabooses and everything. He was a car repairman. I mean, I loved trains. We went out to, at night, my father and I, he'd get a call, and he said, Frank, they have to get a freight train out here, and I'd go hold the light while he'd fill the gunk boxes for him, and it'd get overtime, time and a half, at about $3 an hour back in those days. But the fact is, I have a long love for trains, and that's what got me into model trains. I got started in trains about 1977 when I set out to buy one Santa Fe ABA F3 diesel. Of course, a train that I could never afford when I was young, and we went after that one train that we couldn't afford. Since then, I've amassed thousands of trains, sold thousands of trains, and am now a prominent dealer throughout the country. I am well known throughout all train meets. I'm honest, have a lot of integrity, and I try to bring integrity to the train dealing profession, because I really don't need the money. I do have another full-time job, and I do this as a hobby, and I try to be fair as I can and still stay in business.
The layout is jammed with all kinds of model cars, animations, figures, signs, and buildings. Most of the buildings are Plasticville or K-Line. The large suburban station, neighboring freight depot, and fire station were scratch-built by Lou and his crew. Palumbo wanted more than just the sounds of trains running. 2 tape cassettes and 10 speakers provide everything from the American Flyer station master to a Lionel commercial from the 50s featuring sportscaster Bill Stern. And of course, there's carousel music for the merry-go-round. The impressive carnival is made up of rides designed by Ed and Fran Jones and Al Gamelko. Other animations are by Paul Piker of Spike's Wonderland of Animation. Cork roadbed separates the Lionel track from the 3/4-inch plywood tabletop. The curves are either 042 or 072. Palumbo operates a mix of Lionel, Williams, Weaver, and K-Line, but he sells mostly moderately priced post-war Lionel.
Weaver, Williams, and some of the other producers of the large, expensive trains don't fit in a local hobby shop. I don't have many people that come in here can spend them high dollars, even for the new Lionels. It's killing the old Lionel image that there are little shops like mine around in the area available to service and tell the local people about the trains that are being produced, and then they go and look in a magazine and can buy a mail order at 5 over cost. Thus, we are being killed as being a Lionel rep in the community. Someone buys a new train for the mail order houses, and then they come to me for the service. I can't afford to give that service. So if Lionel has to come to grips, if they want us in the community, they have to do something for us, or else we won't represent them. Maybe they don't care about little shops. Maybe they just produce trains and let who survives, survive. If the large mail order houses go under, they'll become a mail order house. What's to prevent Lionel from becoming the largest mail order house in the United States?
Lou feels the high-dollar days are over for collectors, too.
I think we're in the $200 syndrome, I call it. People will spend, it's a benchmark. They'll spend up to $200 rather readily on a piece. But the days of the $1,000 expenditure, the $5,000 pair of Western Pacifics and all them crazy prices they were asking for post-war, I think it hit at the right time, but that's gone. I see this happening. Everybody competing for the same dollar. That's good for the consumer, bad for the producer. I've said in the last 3 or 4 years, the golden days of trains are over.
Most guys with lots of trains have a difficult time picking out their favorite. Not Lou.
The Lionel F3 Tuscan is definitely my favorite engine of all time. There's nothing better than that. If I had to pick one engine I'd die with, it's the Tuscan F3 Lionel.
Although we knew it was risky, we asked Lou what he thought of Toy Train Review.
I watched my first Toy Train Review last evening after we worked here till 1:30, and I stayed till 2:30 watching Toy Train Review, and I couldn't put it down. In other words, because I liked it, I enjoyed it, and I fidgeted myself on it. But the fact is, if we can get it marketed and get people to believe in it, they won't wait for the next one. I mean, to come out. If you keep on getting good subject matter like myself.
Lou is a solid family man with a fine sense of priorities.
Oh yeah, I am a devout Catholic in terms of I was born and raised in a Catholic school, and my children all go to church, and I go to church if there's not a train meet.
Trainland USA is a toy train layout combined with a history lesson and a geography course.